Hi, everybody. My name is Nanika Edwards. I'm a poet, author, and artist from Trinidad and Tobago in the Southern Caribbean. And today I'm going to be sharing a video with you, which is about critical thinking. And it's based on something that comes from my culture, from the culture of Trinbago. So one of the traditional dishes, especially of Tobago, is crab and dumpling. And the crab is curried. The dumplings are like stiff and flat and really, really yummy when they go together with the curry. So that is a traditional dish of Tobago, but also by extension, also of Trinidad. So I've written a poem. It's called Curried Crab, and it's based on this traditional dish, okay? So this is how the poem goes. Curried crab. Hello, Mr. Crab. It's nice to meet you. Curried sweet. I'm going to eat you. Goodbye, Mr. Crab. So usually this poem gets a chuckle or two from people because it is kind of funny, but there's so much that's packaged into this little poem. To be honest, I didn't really realize how much until I myself started analyzing it. So sometimes as a poet, we may write things and we may not even realize how much we as writers and creatives have injected into our work until we actually sit down and look at it a little more closely or have other people comment on it. Anyway, first of all, before we get into the analysis of these short 5 lines, I wanted to just have you take a look at the artwork. Okay, so we see a crab. How does he look? I mean, all his teeth are showing. So ordinarily, if somebody's teeth are showing like this, you would think that they were smiling, right? But clearly this crab is not smiling. How do we know that he's not really smiling? Can you tell me? Can you take a good look at this illustration and tell me how you know that he's not smiling? I'll give you some time to think about that. Okay, well, first of all, we know he's not smiling because we can see that his eyebrows are slanted downwards, and that tells us that he's not happy, right? So when we can tell a lot about how somebody feels from their facial expression. Like, are they knitting their eyebrows? Are their eyebrows kind of arched upwards in a look of surprise? We can tell a lot by people's facial expressions and how we use our facial muscles, okay? The muscles in our face. So one thing we know here, the eyebrows are slanted downwards. We can also look at where his eyes are focused. So he's looking very far to the left, at least his left, and he's looking at the title of the poem, which is Curried Crab. So what do you think he's thinking? He's probably thinking, I'm going to be that curried crab. And that means I will soon be in a pot and pretty soon be in crab heaven, right? That's probably what he's thinking. The other way that we know that he's not happy, he's not really smiling, he's really grimacing, right? He's not smiling, he's grimacing, is because of those sweat buckets. Not sweat buckets. No, not sweat buckets. Sweat bullets, right? Those bullets of sweat that are, well, he's probably sweating buckets, right? But in anxiety, because you're seeing these droplets of water flying out from his eyes or from his body, right? So those are the 3 indications that we have that he is not really smiling. And do you think he's happy? No, he's not happy. How do you think he feels? Given that his eyebrows are down, he's grimacing, you have water droplets flying from him. Yeah, he's probably afraid, right? He's afraid of being cooked. Now, this is just a simple illustration. It's a crab, but we could do the same thing with people. Like sometimes if you are exerting yourself, using up a lot of energy, playing football or tennis or hockey or cricket or something, you may sweat a lot. And when you do, we would know, okay, well, you were running up and down, you were kicking a ball, you were jumping up and down, whatever you were doing, so you're sweaty. But when you're in a situation where, you shouldn't ordinarily be sweaty, let's say you have a presentation to make, or you have to do something where you have to do something that maybe you're a little nervous about. In those instances, you might sweat a little bit, right? You might have a little underarm moisture, or you might have beads of perspiration on your forehead. You would be able to tell in that situation that somebody may be a bit nervous. Okay, so our body language can tell us um, how we're feeling or what we're thinking. Those cues are very important and are a very important part of critical thinking, because part of critical thinking involves observation. Not only being able to observe ourselves to some extent, objectively, but also being able to observe and understand others and respond accordingly. So in this case, we know that this crab is very, very scared, okay? And if we saw somebody else in maybe a parallel situation, especially like, for example, one thing that makes people very nervous is giving presentations. Like when you have a PowerPoint presentation to do for your class or for an audience, it can be a little scary, because you want to do your best. You want people to think well of you, and you may be afraid that something's going to go wrong. Of course, you may be the complete opposite. You may be very comfortable giving presentations, and it may be something completely different that would make you feel a little nervous. Can you think now of something that makes you nervous, like the way this crab feels right now? Can you think of something that would make you nervous? Think about it. Jot it down on a piece of paper. Maybe even illustrate it. You feeling nervous about something. All right. Now we're going to get into the poem, okay? And we're going to analyze it a little bit more. Okay, so Curried Crab. This is a wonderful poem for teaching both the ability to infer and its value. Inference essentially means reading between the lines. Kids, have you ever heard somebody say that you should read between the lines? If you're a child and you're listening to this, maybe you might be confused by that. Read between the lines does not necessarily mean that you have lines on a page, lines of writing, and you literally have to read between the lines. No, read between the lines means that you need to be able to figure out something that may not be spelt out for you. It may not be made absolutely clear and explained to you in an obvious way. It means looking for subtle things, things that are not clear and obvious, and being able to come to very rational, reasonable, common sense conclusions about things. Okay, being able to figure out what's going on just by looking at things that tell you, that could be indications of what's happening, but without them actually saying, for example, without the crab isn't saying, I'm scared out of my mind. But when you see the sweat, when you see his eyebrows, when you see him looking at the title of the poem, then you know exactly what he's thinking. That's what inference means. Of course, if you're a teenager or an adult, well, I'm sure you would understand what reading between the lines means. This poem does eventually spell out what the fate of poor Mr. Crab is going to be. But the giggles, chuckles, and laughter that the ending elicits or causes or brings about means that kids, teens, and adults alike all know exactly what goodbye means, right? When the end at the end of the poem, the person says, "Goodbye, Mr. Crab," we know that it's not a friendly goodbye, right? Okay. The look on Mr. Crab's face and the bullets of sweat say it all. He quickly puts a whole puzzle together. Pleased to meet you really means fork sharpening knife. The line "I'm going to eat you" puts a whole new spin on every other line. Thanks to his intuitive advantage, that is, he's able to use his instincts, he just might be able to escape the curry sauna being cooked up for him. Kids, do you know what a sauna is? A sauna is like a hot bath, a bathtub with hot water in it. It's almost like a bathtub, but it's not always a bathtub. It's more like a little pool where you can just sit down and relax in some hot or warm water. That's a sauna. So when I say curry sauna, of course, such a thing does not actually exist, a curry sauna. I'm just using my imagination and being a little poetic, okay? So now that Mr. Crab has read between the lines, what do you think he should do? What would you do if you were Mr. Crab? What would you do? What do you think your options are? What do you think? Would you run? Would you play along, maybe jump in the pot and then maybe escape when you get a chance? Would you fight back? What would you do? Would you try to throw your enemy in the pot instead? What would you do? What do you think are Mr. Crab's options? How would you solve this problem if you were Mr. Crab? Okay, the first line of the poem began with a friendly hello, but the last line offered a sinister yet humorous or comical contrast. Goodbye. That's why the poem is so funny. As we say where I come from, Trinidad and Tobago, as I mentioned at the start of the video, not all skin teeth is smile. That is, a friendly face might be the mask of an enemy. So if you're looking at this video, I would encourage you, challenge you to actually do a poster or a piece of art that illustrates all skin teeth is not smile. Now, usually when we say this in Trinidad, what we mean is that if somebody seems outwardly friendly with you, it doesn't necessarily mean that they want to be your friend. They could be hiding the fact that they don't like you or that they don't mean you well. I mean, not everybody is straightforward, right? So we have to be so careful with people sometimes. I think especially the older that we get. But some people, if they don't like you, most times will not come out and tell you, "I don't like you." So you have to read between the lines. So for example, they might smile with you, but are their eyes also smiling? When they smile, their mouth may be smiling, but are their eyes smiling with you? That could be an indication that somebody is not really being genuine, okay? Now, in a case like that, yes, them not being genuine may be one thing, or it could just be that they're having a bad day and they really want to be pleasant with you, but part of them also feels maybe a little unhappy, not because of you, but maybe because of something else. So you just have to be really careful about how we come to conclusions about these different things. The other way that I think that this saying can apply to somebody is just what I was just talking about. Not all skin teeth is smile. So you may ask somebody, "How are you going?" And they may smile wide and tell you, "I'm doing great, I'm doing fine." But if they were really honest with you, they might tell you, "I'm having a really hard day. Everything's going wrong. I'm not feeling so good. I'm feeling kind of blue." In that case, That would be a case of their skin teeth not being smile. Skin teeth is like a grin, like a wide smile, okay? That's what we mean by skin teeth. But usually, when we say that not all skin teeth is smile, what we mean is not everybody who smiles wide with you is your true friend. So that's what that means. So in this case with the crab, you have this person greeting the crab. Hello, Mr. Crab. Nice to meet you. And of course, you hear somebody say, nice to meet you. You think that they mean you well. Curried sweet, you might start getting a little suspicious when you hear curried sweet. And when you hear, I'm going to eat you, well, you know, this is not your friend. And once you hear goodbye, well, you know it will soon be all over, right? So this is what we mean by reading between the lines, because the person who's talking to him isn't actually coming out and saying, you know, I am not your friend. But the crab, by the end of the poem, knows that that is indeed the case. So let's talk a bit more about inference. Inference is a valuable lesson to teach, especially from a young age. It can save anyone a lot of heartache at any stage of their life, but especially in adulthood. So, even though Curried Crab is a super simple poem, and even though it's funny, it's actually teaching a very serious and very subtle and complex skill. So that's it, Curried Crab. So this is an example of critical thinking. Do you know what critical thinking is? If you don't know, I would encourage you to look up a definition on Google or in a dictionary to, get different ideas of how people define critical thinking. But in my mind, critical thinking is essentially being able to think clearly, analytically, and with some degree of sensitivity. That's what I think that critical thinking essentially is, being able to take a lot of different facts and information and make sense of them in a way where you can think very clearly about those things, very rationally, and come to very correct and accurate conclusions about all the information that you've gathered, whether it's information that you gathered by going online and doing research, or whether it's information that you gather from observing the things and people around you. So I hope that you enjoyed that. That was Curried Crab. So just 5 short lines, and we learned a lot about critical thinking. Are you a critical thinker? Are you good at thinking clearly and rationally and analytically? This is a skill that can be developed. So I would encourage you to continue watching the videos that I will be sharing on my YouTube channel. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is to memorize this poem. It's only 5 lines, so it's very easy to memorize, and you can impress your family and your friends if you do. That's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. So I'll say it again for you. Hello, Mr. Crab. So you can wave so that you remember. Hello, Mr. Crab. It's nice to meet you. Give a handshake. Give a handshake. It's nice to meet you. Curried sweet, right? So stir your pot. Stir your pot. Curried sweet. I'm going to eat you, right? We're eating with our hands now, putting our hands, pulling up the food, picking up the food and bringing it to our mouth, right? Curried sweet, right? Stir in the pot. I'm going to eat you, bringing our hands to our mouth. Goodbye, Mr. Crab, and we're waving goodbye now. So let's go through that again. Curried Crab by Nanika Edwards. Hello, Mr. Crab. It's nice to meet you. Curried sweet. I'm going to eat you. Goodbye, Mr. Crab. You could give a wicked laugh at the end of that. Hello, Mr. Crab. It's nice to meet you. Curried sweet. I'm going to eat you. Goodbye, Mr. Crab. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. There are more videos to come. Have a great, great day. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing to my channel if you would like to see more videos like this one. Until next time.